The snow had fallen all night, blanketing our small New England town in a fresh coat of white. I stood by the frost-covered window, wrapped in my robe, holding a warm mug of tea between my hands. The early January light spilled across the streets, casting a soft glow that made everything seem peaceful, almost sacred. There was something about this kind of quiet that brought back memories, both good and painful. It reminded me of how quiet my life had become after Paul left. He walked out when Sam was only 4, leaving us to build a new life together. It wasn't easy at first. There were nights I cried into my pillow so Sam wouldn't hear, but somehow we made it through. He became my rock, the one constant in my life. Watching him grow up, watching him turn from a little boy into a young man, gave me strength. Now he was 21, and though he still lived with me, he was becoming his own person. I could see it in the way he carried himself, the confidence in his voice, the way he looked at the world with such wonder. He had always been someone who saw beauty where others didn't. That's what made his photography so special. It didn't just capture moments, it told stories. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs, slow but steady. I turned just as Sam walked into the kitchen. He was dressed for the cold, jeans, a thick knit jacket, and his camera slung over his shoulder like an extension of himself. His smile was wide, warm even on a morning like this. "Good morning, Mom," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I noticed his beard had grown back a little, making him look older than he already was. "Morning, sweetheart," I replied. "Where are you off to so early?" "The lake," he said, excitement in his tone. "After it snows, the light is perfect. I want to get some shots before it changes." I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. I knew how much this meant to him. "Do you want company?" I asked, surprising myself. Usually, I let him go off on his own when he was working on his art, but today felt different. His eyes lit up. "Really? Would you come with me?" "Of course," I said, smiling. "It's been years since I've seen the lake in winter." We bundled up and stepped outside into the crisp, cold air. The snow crunched under our boots as we walked, the silence between us comfortable rather than awkward. The lake wasn't far, but the walk gave me time to think. About how quickly time had passed, about the choices that had shaped my life, and about how lucky I was to have Sam. When we reached the shore, I stopped in my tracks. The sight was breathtaking. The pale sky reflected off the icy surface of the lake, and the trees surrounding it were covered in frost, glittering like diamonds in the sunlight. Sam immediately pulled out his camera, adjusting the settings with practiced ease. I watched him work, mesmerized by his focus. There was something familiar in the way he moved, something that reminded me of Paul, not the man who had left us, but the dreamer I had once loved. The thought made me pause. "Mom!" Sam's voice pulled me back. He tilted his head slightly, that same thoughtful expression he'd worn since childhood crossing his face. "You okay?" I smiled softly. "Just thinking. About Dad." I hesitated. We didn't talk about Paul often. Sam had never really shown anger toward him, but I knew it had affected him. Now his expression was calm, almost curious. "Sometimes," I admitted, "I see pieces of him in you. Not the man he became, but the one I fell in love with." He was quiet for a moment before asking, "Do you miss him?" I considered the question carefully. "Not always the way you think. I miss the idea of the family we were supposed to be. But I don't regret how things turned out. It gave me more time with you." Sam looked at me for a long moment before stepping closer and wrapping his arms around me. His hug was warm, grounding. "I'm glad it's just us," he whispered. "There's nothing I'd change." My eyes stung, but I blinked away the tears. "Neither would I," I murmured. As the sun rose higher, we stayed by the lake, watching the frost melt and the light shift. Sam captured every detail, the glint of light on the ice, the gentle ripples where the water met the frozen edge, the faint tracks of a fox weaving through the trees. Watching him work, I realized something important. Sam wasn't just my son anymore. He was his own person with dreams and ambitions of his own. But no matter where life took him, I knew our bond would remain unbroken. As we started walking home, I smiled at him. "Sam." "Yeah. Promise me something. Anything. Always find beauty in the world. That's what we need more of." He grinned. "I won't promise that." I laughed. "You're impossible." "No." he corrected, breath forming little clouds in the cold air. I'll always find beauty, because I already know where it is. And where's that? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he raised his camera and pointed it at me. Right here. I brushed snow off my coat. Me? Come on, Sam. I'm not exactly what you'd call photogenic. He lowered the camera slightly, his eyes serious. You're wrong. You're beautiful. Not because of your skin or your hair, but because of who you are. What you've been through. Who you've become. That's what makes someone truly beautiful. I felt my cheeks flush. Not from the cold but from his words. You always did have a way with them. He smirked. It's part of the package. We continued walking, laughing, teasing each other the way we always had. When we got home, I helped him set up his camera equipment while he brewed coffee. He disappeared upstairs to edit his photos, and I spent the afternoon cleaning up and enjoying the quiet. That night I curled up on the couch with a book, the house peaceful and still. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, it was nearly midnight, and I heard footsteps descending the stairs. Sam walked into the living room carrying a sleek black box. He looked nervous but excited. Mom, he said, handing me the box. For your birthday. One last surprise. I smiled. Sam, you've already done so much. Open it, he urged. Inside were layers of tissue paper, and beneath them a beautiful satin robe and a matching set of black lingerie. I looked up at him, touched and surprised. This is lovely, I said, voice shaking slightly. There's more, he said with a grin. Put it on and come upstairs. I hesitated, unsure, but there was something in his voice, something playful, encouraging that made me nod. I took the box to my room and slipped on the robe and underwear, then made my way upstairs. When I pushed open his door, I gasped. The room was bathed in a soft red glow with fabric draped over the lamps. A metal pole stood in the center, and a machine in the corner released wisps of smoke into the air. On the table near the bed sat a sleek black cat mask. You look amazing, Sam said, holding his camera. He handed me the mask. Put this on. The pictures will be better with it. Despite my nerves, his smile reassured me. I took a deep breath and slipped the mask over my face. For fun, he said gently. And for you. I stepped into the red light, letting the music fill the space between us. At first I felt awkward, but Sam's laughter and encouragement eased my tension. He guided me through poses, capturing moments that felt both spontaneous and meaningful. At one point he lowered the camera and said, You're a natural. You don't even realize how incredible you are. His sincerity caught me off guard. Looking into his eyes through the red haze, I felt something shift between us. This wasn't just about photographs, it was about connection. As the night went on, I let go of my fears, dancing and posing in the soft glow. I rediscovered parts of myself I hadn't felt in years. And when I finally climbed the pole, spinning and flipping with a grace I hadn't expected, I saw the awe in Sam's eyes. He clapped when I landed. Mom, that was amazing. Why didn't I know you could do that? I laughed, catching my breath. Old habits die hard. He walked over and kissed my cheek. You really do look beautiful tonight. I smiled, touched. Thank you. He picked up his camera again. One last shot. I leaned against the pole, letting the robe fall from my shoulders. As he snapped the photo, I felt something settle in my heart, gratitude, joy, and a sense of being truly seen. Later, as we shared tea in the kitchen, I felt lighter than I had in years. Sam had given me something I didn't know I needed, a chance to live again. But I didn't know yet that the night wasn't quite over. The house was unusually quiet the next morning, the kind of quiet that made me pause and listen more closely, as if something had shifted in the air overnight. Sam hadn't come downstairs yet, which wasn't like him. He usually woke up early to work on his photos or make coffee. I sat at the kitchen table with my tea, staring out the window where the snow was beginning to melt under the pale sun. My mind drifted back to the night before, the red light, the music, the laughter, the way Sam looked at me through the lens. I had felt so alive. But now there was a strange stillness in the house, like the echo of something unspoken. I decided to check on him. As I climbed the stairs, I heard faint sounds coming from his room, low whispers, the soft tapping of keys, maybe even the occasional sigh. I knocked gently. Sam? No answer. I turned the knob and pushed the door open slowly. And froze. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, legs spread slightly apart, the camera clutched tightly in his hands. The screen glowed faintly, but I didn't need to look closely to know what was on it. It was me. From last night. In the red light. In the mask. In the robe. In the underwear. In poses I had forgotten I struck. In moments that were meant for us alone. He must have heard me come in because he jolted upright, face turning crimson. He fumbled with the camera, quickly turning it off, almost dropping it in his panic. "Oh, Mom," he stammered, voice cracking slightly. I didn't hear you knock." I stepped inside and closed the door behind me, not out of anger but to give him space. He looked so embarrassed, so vulnerable, and I realized in that moment that this wasn't about shame, it was about honesty. "It's okay," I said softly, trying to ease the tension. "Why did you turn it off so fast?" "I want to see them." His eyes darted to the floor, his fingers gripping the camera like it was an anchor. There you go again," he mumbled. I gave him a small smile and sat beside him on the bed. "You took those pictures, Sam. You saw something when you looked through that lens. I want to see it too." He hesitated for a long time, then let out a slow breath. With trembling fingers, he handed me the camera. "I didn't mean to make things awkward," he whispered. "I just wanted to get everything right." I pressed the power button and the screen lit up. The first image was of me standing near the pole, one hand resting lightly against it, the other brushing over my shoulder as I leaned forward. The red light cast shadows across my body, highlighting curves I hadn't thought about in years. There was strength in the pose, but also softness, a mix of vulnerability and confidence. I scrolled through the rest, each one capturing a different emotion. Me laughing, head thrown back in pure joy. Me looking directly into the lens, eyes full of mischief. Me spinning around the pole, hair flying, body stretched in motion that defied age and expectation. "These are incredible," I murmured, my voice shaking slightly. He glanced up at me, searching my face. "Do you really mean that?" I nodded, looking him straight in the eye. "Sam, you're so talented. This is how you see the world and how you see me. And it's beautiful." His shoulders relaxed a little, and he bit his lip in that shy way he always did when he was unsure of himself. I wanted you to see how amazing you are." My heart swelled. "You've already given me so much," I said gently. "How much more do you think I need?" We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the night settling between us, not heavy but deep. "Real." Then with a teasing grin, I nudged his shoulder. "You're blushing." He laughed, running a hand through his hair. "I just didn't expect you to walk in while I was looking at them." I took the camera from him and placed it carefully on the bed. Then I reached over and squeezed his hand. "Don't be embarrassed. What you created is beautiful and I'm proud of you." He looked at me, eyes wide and honest. "Thanks, Mom," he said quietly, voice catching. "Thank you." I leaned in and kissed his cheek, just like I had done 100 times before. But this time it felt different. Like we had crossed a threshold together, one built on trust, love, and understanding. As I stood to leave, I paused at the door. "You have a gift, Sam. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." He smiled, eyes shining. "I won't." Back downstairs, I poured myself another cup of tea and sat by the window again. Outside, the snow was melting, revealing patches of grass beneath. The world was waking up. So was I. That afternoon, Sam came down with his camera tucked under his arm. His cheeks were still flushed, but he seemed lighter somehow. He sat beside me on the couch, flipping through some of the photos again. "You know," he said after a while, "I think these might be some of my best work." I grinned. "Well, you better start submitting them somewhere. Maybe a gallery show." He raised an eyebrow. "You'd let me display those?" I shrugged. "If they mean something to you, then yes. They're part of who we are." He stared at me for a long moment, then pulled me into a hug. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too," I whispered back. Later that evening, we sat together editing the photos, laughing at the ones that made us look ridiculous, marveling at the ones that captured something real. At one point, he paused on a shot of me mid-spin, frozen in motion, my face lit with pure joy. "This one," he said, pointing. "This is the one I'll never forget." I looked at it and smiled. "Because it shows me happy?" "No," he said softly. "Because it shows you free." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Maybe I am." The days that followed felt different. Lighter. Like something had shifted between us, not in a bad way, but in a deeper one. We still teased each other, still shared quiet mornings and late-night conversations, but now there was an added layer of knowing. Of acceptance. One afternoon, as the snow finally began to disappear entirely, Sam came to me with a proposal. "I want to do a photo series," he said. "About beauty. About real women. About resilience. About you. I blinked. Me? He nodded. You're the most beautiful person I know, Mom. Not just because of how you look, but because of who you are. What you've been through. How you keep going. I swallowed hard. I don't know. Just think about it, he said gently. Please. So I did. And eventually I agreed. We spent the next few weeks working on the project. He photographed me in places that held meaning, by the lake, in our backyard, in front of the old theater downtown. Some shots were candid, others posed. Some were serious, others playful. All of them told a story. Mine. Ours. When the series was complete, Sam submitted it to a local gallery. I didn't expect anything to come of it. But a month later, he came home with news. They accepted it, he said, barely able to contain his excitement. They're going to feature it in the spring exhibit. I hugged him tight. I'm so proud of you. And of you, he said, smiling. Of us. The night of the opening, we stood side by side as people wandered through the gallery, stopping to look at the photos. Some smiled. Some cried. Most just stared, transfixed. Sam stayed close to me the whole time, occasionally pointing out a favorite shot or whispering a joke only we would understand. At one point, a woman approached us, tears in her eyes. These are stunning, she said. And so brave. I looked at Sam, then back at her. Brave isn't the word I'd use. Honest, maybe. True. She nodded. Even better. As the night wore on, I watched Sam talk to people about his work. He spoke with passion, with purpose. He wasn't just showing off photographs, he was sharing a message. That beauty doesn't fade with age. That strength comes in many forms. That love can take unexpected shapes. And that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones closest to home. As we walked home under the stars, Sam slipped his arm through mine. You okay? He asked. I smiled. More than okay. He squeezed my hand. Good. And in that moment, I knew something important. Life wasn't perfect. It never had been. But it was full. Full of love. Full of art. Full of moments waiting to be captured. And I was ready to live every single one.